They sent people to my driveway to take my son, and they were wearing HOA uniforms like they were police. Two men grabbed Owen's arms and started toward a black van. I ran out with groceries in my hands, and the world narrowed to one sharp, stupid thought. Nobody takes my kid. My name is Ethan Clark, and for 20 years I learned how to read danger, how to move before chaos does. But nothing in my training prepared me for a fake authority that smelled like cheap cologne and felt like bile in the throat. I moved first because there was no choice, because a father's first job is to be the wall between his child and whatever tries to break him. And because, when those men tried to read me their script, everything they thought they owned came undone in a single heartbeat. I live in Riverbend Estates with my son Owen. He's 15, tall for his age, still wears his varsity jacket when he's hanging in the driveway, still thinks I'm invincible, and I let him keep that for as long as I can. We moved out here for the quiet for the schools, and because back then the HOA felt like a polite committee with too many emails, not an armed concept. Rebecca Lang was the name on the newsletters, the woman who chaired meetings with a smile that never reached her eyes. She liked phrases like community standards and preserving value. She spoke for the neighborhood in that syrupy way people use when they're practicing to be someone else. At first, it was small things, a typed notice about my front flag being incongruent with neighborhood aesthetic, a slip saying my trash can was obtrusive, an informal call that smelled like passive aggression and legalese. I answered with questions which rule show me the minutes, sign your name. The emails came back clipped, bureaucratic, or not at all. Then they started sending people out. The first time they came, they told Owen he was violating community standards by shooting hoops in the driveway. They had no badge numbers, no county imprimatur, only a laminated card that said, Riverbend Enforcement in block letters, and a confidence that filled the street. When I asked for identification, the older guy, Mark Hayes, snorted and said, "This is HOA business, sir. You're interfering." The other one, Derek, kept glancing around like a kid trying to see if anyone was watching. They tried to put zip ties into the van. They spoke like they had rehearsed outrage, and they expected obedience. I remember the squeeze in my chest, that raw animal heat rising, and the out-of-body thought, why would a homeowners association think it can drag a teenager to a van? It was the normal details that betrayed them. Mismatched font on their papers, a rented van with a faded plate, a form that listed a Pineview processing location that didn't exist. But in the moment my son was being grabbed and they told him he had to come with them for processing, the only option I saw was to step between him and the door. The neighborhood watched. Mrs. Julia Barnes from next door stepped onto her porch and started recording. That small act, someone else lifting their phone instead of looking away, is what changed everything that day. After they left, after the sirens and the statements and Detective Harris, who smelled like coffee and seriousness, I sat at my kitchen table and felt hollow. Owen trembled. I did what I could. Filed police reports, copied video from Julia, saved the weird pamphlets they left behind. But something worse settled in, a creeping doubt that maybe I had overreacted, that maybe I had escalated something that could have been solved with a polite letter, that maybe my military reflexes saw enemies where there were none. I lay awake replaying voices, wondering if my insistence on defending him made our family a target, if my refusal to be reasonable would make Rebecca turn the whole HOA machine on us. There was a night I almost gave in shredded paperwork in a trash bag, a quiet delete of emails, a move to avoid headlines. I thought about Owen's teachers, about the softball coach who'd once told me, "Don't make waves," and for a few hours I believed being quiet was safer. Then Mrs. Barnes knocked on my door with a flash drive and a look that said she wasn't done. She said, "You saw that right, and I saw hundreds of pixels. Other houses, other men, other visits." The Johnsons, next block over, had been stopped 3 days before. The Andersons had been held inside their garage for an hour until the older brother burst in from college. It wasn't random. It wasn't a rogue couple of busybodies. It was a pattern, scripted threats, fines requested, and names that kept recurring. The more I looked, the angrier I got, but anger alone wasn't enough. I needed evidence and allies. Detective Harris became one of those allies, a man with Midwest patience and a badge who told me plainly that if we had recordings and receipts and witness statements, the county would pay attention. His words were the turning point. If you bring me proof of impersonation and coercion, we'll pursue it. So I dug. I spent nights building a file like I used to build mission packets, timelines, license plate pulls, phone records, copies of the laminated cards, the refuse of their operation in neat folders. Owen helped. He sat across from me and told me everything they said, every odd phrase, every stupid aside. He wanted to help because he was angry too, not at me, but at the idea someone could treat his life like a nuisance. A threatening text I received made the decision for me. "Drop it, or there will be consequences," it read, blunt and proud of its cowardice. I took screenshots, forwarded them. That message made them sloppy. That message told me they were not professional, only arrogant. We also found a pattern in timing late afternoons families with teenagers' unincorporated pockets where residents might be confused about jurisdiction. They were picking people like they were easy marks. The investigation revealed that Rebecca had quietly authorized a team of neighborhood enforcers, a private enforcement idea that in her head was about property values and in practice was about control and revenue. She would sign off on faxes, never hand-signed, and her team would appear with authority manufactured. When we confronted the HOA at a community meeting, me, Owen, Detective Harris quietly present, Rebecca smiled and used that practiced voice. We do what's necessary to protect our community. I spoke into a mic that night and said, "Protection ends when you make threats and arrests without law." The faces in the room shifted. People who had been passive, embarrassed, afraid to be the first to speak, they started telling their stories. Mark Hayes had been at 3 different visits. Derek's hands shook when pressed for explanations. The evidence stacked rental agreements paid with stolen cards, fake processing paperwork, zip ties in a trunk, a text thread arranging phony fines. Rebecca tried to bluff. She tried to gaslight the room. I was just enforcing standards. I signed nothing that would cause harm, but a stack of emails and witness statements is a heavier thing than charm. The climax didn't happen with guns or a chase. It happened with lights, with microphones, with the slow, helpless dignity of a woman who realized her script no longer held power. Detective Harris read charges into the record: impersonation, coercion, conspiracy to defraud, words that in the end did what they were supposed to do, strip away the veneer of authority. Rebecca was escorted from the dais. 2 men who had tried to carry a kid to a van were led out in handcuffs. I remember standing on the pavement while they walked past Rebecca's face, a mix of panic and disbelief, and I felt something fold inside me that wasn't celebration. It was a release, yes, but mostly a weight that had kept me awake for weeks. Owen stood beside me. He didn't hug me like a movie, he simply breathed like a boy who had just been declared safe by the simplest justice there is, rules actually enforced. I'm not telling this story to make myself a hero. I'm telling it because the stares that say mind your own business are usually the prelude to indifference, and indifference is what lets this kind of abuse grow. We nearly lost our sense of safety because someone decided a little authority was a license to terrorize. In that quiet, after they led Rebecca away and the van's plate number was logged and the lawyers began to file, I realized the lesson. Community means mutual responsibility, not a throne for the loudest voice. Justice arrived because neighbors recorded, because a detective listened, because a kid had the courage to say what he saw. That was the pivot: collective refusal to accept abuse. If there's one thing I hope you take from this, it's simple: never accept fake authority. Never let anyone tell you they can take your child because they claim a title. Hold them to the law. Demand proof. Fight for your people. Justice is louder when we record it, when we speak it, when we refuse to be silenced. Never accept fake authority.